We continue talking about topics related to the three-body problem. This time, what about four dimensions, four spatial dimensions? And that's an interesting question because there are many things that we know about from our own lives and from our study of science that indicate that we live in only three large spatial dimensions. There might be some small dimensions, fourth and fifth, and so on. We live in three spatial dimensions and one time dimension. And it's easy. We see the force fall off as 1 over the distance squared for gravity, for a lot of things. Now, if there are extra dimensions, it would fall off more quickly. And so that means either we are constrained and the forces we deal with are constrained to live in only three dimensions, or the fourth dimension isn't large, it's small, and therefore these things can't get out of that. So the question is, what is it? If we understand space-time better, could we create four-dimensional objects? Could we understand things better? So I think back of something that I saw when I was quite young. There is a painting by Salvador Dali of Christ on a four-dimensional cross. So the cross is made out of a four-dimensional cube that's unfolded. And because the cube looks like this in three dimensions, but it's got the same in the other dimension, when you unfold it, you can unfold it to look like a cross. And so it's a very interesting painting. And it was during the time when people were starting to try and understand geometry and understand it. And as a painter, he was inspired to think in terms of what would be understanding differently like that. And so the answer is it depends on the nature of the four-dimensional space, how you would look at it. But it's clear that if you were truly a four-dimensional being, you would see the three-dimensional being the kind of same way we see a map. We find it very convenient to take something that's very microscopic and then make a map about this size so we can look at it, or take something that's very large and make a map and look at it and understand it. You would see our three dimensions looking through the way a two-dimensional map looks to us. And it helps us understand things a lot, but it doesn't make you understand everything completely. It's just inspiring and difficult to think about. It's very difficult to think about what does a four-dimensional cube really look like if you had it and rotated it around three dimensions, because it's complicated the way it ends up looking. And that's what Salvador Dali was exploiting in his painting. And so I think that was a clever thing that Liu did as a writer, but I think it didn't really give another explanation of what's going on. It's just saying, wait a minute, if we're a much more advanced society, we understand things, we might be able to create things in four dimensions and therefore put out whole histories or do things like that. And why was one of the four-dimensional things they discovered a tomb? Did it have the whole history of the person's life? What was the point of it? And why does it collapse and decay quickly when it gets in touch with three dimensions, right? And so it's a very interesting question, and it's a question that has been thrilling theorists for a while, because in terms of string theory and in terms of trying to understand the basics of all physics, they kind of like to see a 10-dimensional kind of space as something. Now, not all of those dimensions are large, but some of them could be large, and you could imagine they inflate, that somehow the part that we happen to be in happens to have three large spatial dimensions and one large time dimension. But you could imagine spaces that could have two time dimensions and three large spatial dimensions, or one time dimension and four spatial dimensions. Those could exist. They're more complicated, and the forces and things would be different there unless they're constrained to stay in their more limited dimension. So it's interesting, and people worry about this and do mathematics about this all the time, and even give talks on a weekly basis. But we haven't been able to find any direct evidence of this large fourth dimension.